Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laurie Knape with Avetta. Thank you for taking the time to join our breakout session this afternoon. I hope you find the information provided today useful for you in your business adventures. We're going to just take a quick look at our agenda. We're going to talk about contractor management, Amazon's specific audit findings, safety management systems, and the importance of subcontractor safety. So this is a contracting chain, and we all know that you have different levels of your interaction and your relationships with your contractors. So we wanted to kind of set the page and talk about a robust contractor management program. A robust program collects, assesses, and provides vital data to aid in the making of appropriate business decisions. When you look at this chain, where are your contractors aligned? What does your contractor chain look like? It's important when you're making business decisions with contractors to see where they fit in the hierarchy of your now org chart, so to speak. Are they a one-off that you only bring them out for a day so they're kind of distant? Do you use them all the time where you want to have a more intimate relationship with them and maybe a little more sharing of processes and procedures? So you really need to decide where your contractors fall in the contracting chain. So what is contractor management? It's simple. Just like we all know, it's typically pre-qual questionnaires, audits, training, monitoring their performance, insurances, and of course, work contracts. Contractor management, however, should be valued the same way as any other management system your company uses. It needs to be reviewed and updated on a periodic basis. There are certain tasks that need to be provided annually, such as OSHA logs, certificate of insurance, and it is a good practice to review your safety questionnaire for any changes, removals, or add-ons to tasks performed or previously not performed. When you're looking at your contractors, don't assume that what they did for you last year is what they're going to do for you this year. Always take an opportunity to look again and see what their true work agreement is. So we're going to look at safety management systems audits. Why conduct an audit? Obviously, as it says, verify programs are established, verify the effectiveness of the program, verify the programs are meeting the company's performance objectives, and verify that the programs are even implemented. So audits should always be viewed as a gap analysis. We verify that the programs provided meet the requirements. When there are audit findings, it's an opportunity for the company to review and update their programs to close those gaps. Despite the exasperation of audit findings, we do hope that you perceive them as they are intended, a gap analysis, to allow you to enhance your programs and policies, which will make you a safer company. A safe workplace is a sign of a well-managed company. And when we're looking at the manual audit, it is exactly that. It's to identify health, safety, and environmental gaps. It's not meant for any other purpose but to make sure that the requirements and the objectives of the hiring company meet or are met by the requirements and objectives of the contractor. So we wanted to take a minute and look at some Amazon-specific contractor findings. We're going to take a look at overall supplier findings, not any particular industry trade. Just like OSHA's top 10, it's a summary of all suppliers working for Amazon. We did not pick out that these were just contractors or, construction contractors or electricians or plumbers. These are all industry trades combined. So we ran the analytics and we came up with the top 10 gaps that we have found during our Amazon audits. And we're going to take a closer look at each one to kind of give you some help why they were left as open requirements and that requirement was not closed upon the first program provided. And there's no preference. I'm just going clockwise. There's nothing here that one has any more importance than the other. They are all important. So the first one we're going to look at is tool safety. The most missed question within this category was ergonomics. While we typically think of ergonomics as computer workstations, repetitive motions, manual lifting, there is an ergonomic issue with tool use as well. It's critical that you're aware of hand, foot, and body placement to reduce injuries. Let's think about body positioning. When you're pushing down forcibly with a tool, are you thinking of what's going to happen to your body position when that force is released? Are you going to fall backwards? Are you going to fall forwards? The other tool that's considerably missed is powder-actuated tools. Powder-actuated tools are a very specific tool that is not used by all industries. Most common are a type of nail gun used to join hard surfaces like the one in our picture. They use a controlled explosion to activate the gun. Many times this section is read as power activated, not powder activated, and it's believed that, and suppliers believe that it's covered in their power tools section, which is not correct. Power tools are typically battery or electrical operated. It's important with any document to really read, not skim read, and I'm a terrible skim reader, but understand what is written. Our next section is HAZCOM. So there's several sections within HAZCOM that are missed. Location of safety data sheets, implementation of HAZCOM at multiple work sites, labels, and of course training. I really wanted to showcase labeling because that's an important piece of it. When GHS was released, one of the big issues was container labeling, and it states, labels must be maintained on chemicals in a manner which continues to be legible and pertinent information, such as the hazards and directions for use does not get defaced, such as faded or washed away, or removed in any way. As you can see by our picture, this is not a label that has been maintained in legible manner. Typically, when a smaller container is filled from a larger container, there's a little bit of overspill. That overspill can wrinkle the data, wash away the data, cause the data to bubble, cause the label to bubble. This diminishes the integrity of the label. It also diminishes the integrity of the worker, the protection of the worker. Our next section is cranes. The crane section is usually pretty good. Crane training is not usually a problem. We know you have to have a crane license. We know you have to have a signal person. We know you have to have inspections on your rigging. Those are usually pretty standard, not much problem there. The problem that we do see, or the gap that we do see, is when we address assembly and disassembly. A lot of companies do not assemble or disassemble their cranes. They operate the crane, but they do not set them up or tear them down. So a simple note stating that it's out of your scope of work is all that's needed to close that gap. And then the other one is a critical lift. So critical lifts require a lift plan. Typically, they require a lift plan. And there's a definition that's provided about what a critical lift is. And it's obviously when you're using two or more multiple cranes to move one object, exceeding 75% of the total capacity of the crane, moving over or suspended over a structure or a public street, lifting an item of high value or long replacement time. Those are some suggestions of what a critical lift is and when you would need a critical lift plan. So again, as you can see by our picture, because we have two cranes lifting such a large object, it would require a lift plan, and the lift plans are usually created by an engineer. The next one that pulled up was electrical. Within the electrical, there were two sections that are prominent, and one of them is training, and then the other one is working near or under overhead lines. So if you power lines. So if your company is internal only and you do not have any outside work, you would have no exposure to working under or near overhead lines. The other one that is surprising to me is the fact that training was one of the things that came up as a deficit and a gap in the audits. Everyone should have training, and certainly if you're doing electrical work, you absolutely should be training your people. So our next section was aerial lifts, elevated platforms, and this covers a variety of equipment. It covers many different types of mobile elevated work platforms, and that's an acronym that we see constantly, MEWP. So this section, and this is the biggest one that's missed, because within aerial lifts it talks about fall protection, it talks about dropped objects and that type of thing in training, of course. But the one that's missed frequently in aerial lifts is modifications to the lift. There is a requirement that if you're going to modify the lift, you must have authorization from the manufacturer. And it's critical that we know if you allow modifications in the field, because again, that would potentially decrease the safety rating. So we would need to know, and some of the things in a very bad situation would be if you used, a board to extend the worker's reach or place the lift on blocks to extend the height. Those are some incredibly crude modifications that could be done, but even other types of modifications of more detail, but you do need to have a program in place if you do allow field modifications. So the next one is general programs, and that is kind of our catch-all. All of the categories, you folks are typical, you folks are used to the Avetta manual audit. So typically that you open up a category and the questions inside are a subset to that particular title. The general programs, of course, is not like that. It's a catch-all of everything. It's a combination of questions for overall safety, accident investigation, discipline, housekeeping, new hire orientation. The biggest one that we find here is working alone. It's really important that you have a process in place for lone workers. For workers that are going out not in a team, after hours, from home, in an emergency situation, you should have something where they need to call in and out at the end of the shift, or perhaps a GPS in their vehicle or a GPS in a company phone. This exercise is not for payroll. This exercise is for safety. It's for ensuring that your workers have made it to and from their locations safely. We see reports all the time where someone went out to check on a pipe in a field or in a confined space, and the wife calls, the husband never came home from work, and they go and they find that the worker has been unfortunately overcome by fumes in a confined space, and there was no one there to help him or rescue him. So making sure that you have a program in place for knowing where your remote workers are is really an important thing. Our next section is hot work. Hot work, believe it or not, has two chemicals or metals, cadmium and hexavalent chromium. Those are missed a lot. If you're welding on stainless steel or certain types of metals, you can create, chromium fumes, and you need to have a program in place for them because of the potential respiratory illness that your worker could get. And it's important that if you have a welder that has a reaction and you need to send them to the emergency room, that you send the MSDS sheets or the SDS sheets with him or her. A lot of emergency room doctors mistake welding fume illness for just the common flu. So make sure you send as much data with the injured person as you can. The other thing that's missed frequently is Firewatch. So OSHA says that you must have a Firewatch, a dedicated Firewatch for 30 minutes after you've stopped the job at a minimum. So many times people in their program will say that there's a fire extinguisher nearby, but that does not qualify, because if the welder is busy welding, they may not be aware that a spark flew off somewhere and set something on fire. So you must have a dedicated Firewatch when you are welding outside of a designated welding area. If you're a fab shop and you have curtains and welding rooms, that rule does not apply. This is for welding that is out in the open, or perhaps in the parking lot, or perhaps, at an off-site location for non-conventional welding activities. So the next one is hearing conservation. The biggest missed item is baseline and annual audiogram testing. Most companies are really great about noise level monitoring. They identify their areas where there could be a potential noise exposure. They're really great about PPE, earplugs everywhere, dispensers everywhere, and the training of how to wear an earplug. But the audiogram portion is missing frequently. Audiograms per OSHA must be obtained within the first 6 months of employment and annually thereafter. And the annual here is the big point. You have to do it before the last audiogram expires. The only exception for that is if you use a mobile van for testing. The scheduling of the van could prevent meeting within that 1-year requirement, although hopefully you're ahead of that and have your scheduling when the mobile van is there, just book them for the next year and book them a week ahead in case there's any weather disturbances or anything like that that could potentially cause a delay in getting them out. So our next one is Scaffolds. So Scaffolds, believe it or not, are considered a mobile working platform, but they have their own requirements as well. The biggest one that is missed with Scaffold is tagging. This is the absolute most missed question. Scaffolds, as a good practice, should be tagged either green okay to use or red not okay to use. This provides clarity that the scaffold has been inspected and is ready for work and reduces injuries. The competent person is required to inspect the scaffold pre-use and to keep track of the scaffold inspections. Tagging is that visual identifier of the inspection result, and then everybody is on the same page that the competent person has been there and that he has deemed that the scaffold is safe to use. And our last one out of the top 10 is Contractor Management. While it is important for you to have a well-communicated, robust management system, it is equally important, if not more important, that your subcontractors have an equal or better program than you. This process is like the OSHA. If you have a state plan, your state plan must meet or exceed OSHA's plan. Remember that that contractor is representing your company. Your company's good name and quality of work reputation are at risk based upon a potential error of the subcontractor. So making sure that their safe work practices either meet or exceed yours is an important part of contractor management. So I wanted to just take a quick minute and break out just the subcontractor findings. So subcontractors are used frequently. It is important that the same criteria used to qualify the prime contractor is used to qualify the subcontractor. Everyone is working together at the same location and exposed to the same risks. It is critical to classify the subcontractor as such. There's an importance to verify that insurances are in place, the understanding of work and the hazards are known, and the overall rules of the work environment are communicated to everyone. Subcontractors might just be called out for a day or even a few days, but it does not make their exposure any less. And the importance for the subcontractor as well, for those of you that have the role of being a subcontractor, it is important that you make sure that you have your insurances and your work instructions where they need to be. If your employee is not identified as a subcontractor and you do not have that subcontracting chain and you have not gotten the certificate of insurance showing who's responsible for what and their employees, your worker may not be covered under workers' comp if unfortunately they are subjected to an injury. You're not doing that job, someone else is doing that job, and vice versa. If you are the contractor and you have a subcontractor, you need to make sure that their insurances are in place as well, because your insurance will not cover them. They are not your employee. And we've run into that in the past where, unfortunately, then it becomes very legal, which is not fun for anybody, and the ultimate sufferer is the worker because their care can be held up. So in summary, this is just a visual breakdown of all of the 10 that we showed in bigger detail. So you can see every question that was looked at and every one that we addressed. There are I know that it looks like the general programs has more issues, and that's not really a fair assumption. As you can see, with most, and you know this from filling out the questionnaire, with most of the categories, they may have 3, 4, 5 questions. The general program has a lot of questions. And as I mentioned before, the general programs is not a subset. They're independent of each other. So the general programs actually does not have a higher gap than the other programs. It just looks that way because of the volume of questions. So we wanted to take a minute and look at safety management systems, because while we've looked at the importance of contractors and subcontractors, let's take a minute and look at the safety management systems. So this is a really fun slide, and it simply means this. Most companies have similar requirements or ingredients. How they are organized or how they are prioritized by their level of risk is each individual company's recipe. Everybody has to follow OSHA, ANSI, API, ISO, whatever it may be. How you follow it or what you do and what tasks you have varies from other companies. So what is a safety management system? It's exactly what it says. It's a tool used to identify hazards. It's a systematic process for managing risk. It provides a focused approach. And as it's stated, a safety management system is a tool to make better safety decisions, which means better company performance. A safety manual needs analysis. You may not have thought that you would need to perform a safety needs analysis, but like any other task, job safety needs, training safety needs, financial needs, you need to perform a safety manual needs analysis. You must understand the work performed, bring in your SMEs to determine the hazards and recommended corrections. Go out at the job site and look at the work being performed and assess what safety programs you need to have in place to create that safe work environment. You need to continually improve the manual by periodic reviews to determine that it is still meeting your performance objectives, or review it after a significant event and when there is a change in a process or a regulation, or perhaps a previously unknown risk has now been identified. You can't just do it once and put it on the shelf. Your safety management system must be a living, live document. Some companies choose to use a pre-written safety program. That is not a problem. Absolutely not a problem. The issue is when you do not review the program to remove sections that are not part of your scope of work, or to revise the program to add things that are your scope of work. You have to make it specific to your scope of work. A purchased off-the-shelf safety manual without revisions gives the first impression of your company's safety culture and the importance of safety to your company. The importance of good safety management cannot be underrated. While safety should be written into every component of your operational procedures, at times it is a brief overview and not a safety procedure. A robust safety management system, as with any other system, should have a seat at the table and be given the same importance as any other system. I wanted to go back and just touch briefly on the importance of reviewing a purchased safety manual. When we get a safety manual and it has all of these things in it, we add it to your profile. We assume you do that work. Why wouldn't we? You have a program for it. Then you come back and you say, no, we don't really do that, so now we need a waiver. No problem. Send me a waiver. If you tell me you don't do it, that's your statement. But the problem is that then it's in and out, in and out, in and out. And when the hiring company looks at this, and like I mentioned before, it gives a first impression of your safety culture. When the hiring company looks at this and sees that there was not even the attention or the time invested to go through and remove things that are not part of your scope of work before you gave that as a published document, it just goes to show that safety is not a priority to you or to your company. Just take that extra minute and either add in or remove those programs in those paid for safety programs. And like I say, there's nothing wrong with them. They're well written. They cover everything. We expect your safety program to be part of your training tool. So you should have looked through it if it's part of your training tool. And we wanted to look at what your program should have. Typical stuff: statement of commitment, identified roles and responsibilities, injury reporting, investigations, and lessons learned. Policy for tasks performed, even job descriptions, because job descriptions will show work performed and training needed. Obviously, training and safety orientation for both direct hires, contractors, or even visitors. Your safety orientation can obviously be amended to the exposed risk of whoever it is, whether it's a new hire, a contractor for a short term, or a visitor just coming in to take a look around and see if they want to do work with you. And again, this is not an exclusive list. These are just some highlights. So safety management system maturity. What is maturity? The extent to which the safety management system is established, implemented, maintained, and continually improved. Great sentence, but what does that really mean? So it means exactly what it says. How repeatable are the results? How do you know that you're doing what you do? And how well do you know what you're doing? What kind of review and assessment do you do of your safety manuals? So the maturity phases are exactly what they say. Establish. Do you say what you do? Do you have a written process? Step 1, do you do what you say? Step 2, do you document what you do? Step 3, do you maintain your processes and verify that they're meeting your performance objectives? And then improvement. Are you constantly looking for continual improvement things that you can do to make your programs better and more effective? Another part that you might be interested in is maturity scoring. So this is a common scoring that's used in multiple businesses, and you can use this and you can either give it a 1 through 5 or an A through E or whatever you choose to do. And it just read your components. Are they fully established? Are they in place but not implemented? Are they kind of in place but not really used? Are they really not there at all, or are they not there at all? So you need to look, and this again is part of your maturity. As your time goes on, the maturity of your safety programs obviously should grow. And you should be able to start ticking off the 1, 2, and 3 and get into the 4 and 5 all the time. And this is a great, so the thing about that safety monitoring scoring is that it's a great KPI. As you look at your programs every year or whatever your document review is, you can actually create KPIs that you've amended this, you've improved that. It's a great KPI to capture. So we wanted to look at some proven practices for developing a robust system. And obviously it's verify, make sure they align with your objectives, review and update, and make sure that all the procedures are used throughout the organization. Safety should not be a silo. These should all meet together because at the end, it is one company. And the benefits, of course, are just exactly what it says. Reduction in numbers and severity of injuries, which is what we're looking for. Obviously, reduction of workers' costs. Comp saves us on our premiums. It clearly outlines roles and responsibilities so you know who to go to. Regular inspections / audits so that you continually see for that improvement. And then it trains and orients to eliminate and avoid all hazards. One of the things about this type of work into a management system is that it embeds the importance of safety within the culture of the organization. Safety doesn't become an afterthought, it just becomes part of the everyday thought. And this here, just real quick, we won't spend any time on this. This is kind of a cycle. Here's a flow chart where you can develop your needs, develop your programs, do an audit, find your gaps, close your gaps, and then do your improvement sustainability.
Hey, Laurie.
Uh-oh.
Hey, Laurie, Sean. Hey, I just wanted to leave some time for Q&A. And just a reminder while you wrap up your last slide or two here,
Okay.
if anyone does have a question, please put it into the chat box, and Laurie and I will get to that. So again, if you have any questions, on the right-hand side, you should see a stream chat. Drop any questions you may have there.
Okay, great. Do I have time for one more slide?
You do, yep. One more slide while we're waiting on questions.
Okay, cool. All right. So like I was starting to say, this is a great tool, and this is in the resource page. And we looked at this. We won't get into this because we're out of time. I did want to share this slide with you. It is a flow chart, and it definitely is a great way for you to evaluate if you have everything in place that you need before you start work. And then again, remembering that contractor management is a multi-step process. No process is less important than any other process. And we want to make sure that we have great communication and feedback about what went great, what didn't go great, how we can make it better, not just internally, but externally as well. Whoops, why did that go that way? Oh, this one here. I just wanted to show quickly, and these will be in the slides. These next couple of slides are just some citations for contractors that have been issued to subcontractors to contractors and contractors to the general contractor. The importance of really great contractor management, and this is part of it. And of course, obviously, the multi-employer policy. And then in closing, like we say, we just want to make sure that like it says, with the ever-increasing use of contractors and suppliers and services and suppliers, that the working relationship between companies and contractors is absolutely critical. And this just all comes down to good safety. And as it says, safety is just good business.
Thank you, Laurie. Yeah, much appreciated. And just to plug on part 2, which will begin at around 12:40 Pacific time, Laurie will be continuing the conversation and talking about the integrated management system best practices. And so hopefully you got a lot out of this session. So again, haven't seen any questions come through on the Twitch chat here. We do have some pre-questions that have been asked prior to, and so Laurie, we have time for probably one of these. Okay. And let's go with question number 1 here. What do I do if there's a task or a section of a category that my company does not perform?
So that's within the audit, I'm assuming. So for tasks that are out of your scope of work, it's really simple, and we say this 4 million times a week. On signed, dated company letterhead. Has to be those 3 things. It has to be dated that it was stated during the time of that audit. It has to be signed by someone within your company to show that it really came from you. And it definitely has to be on company letterhead that, again, it came from you. You have to remember that this documentation in an audit is good for 3 years. So the conversation that you have with your auditor today, 2.5 years ago, that conversation isn't going to be remembered or noted by anybody, perhaps if it's just an actual phone conversation. So that's why we're so picky about signed, dated company letterhead. And just a very simple statement. The following tasks are out of our scope of work. Don't need anything more than that. We don't need a big explanation. You're telling us you don't do it. We totally believe you. And for me, I tell everybody, list them all on one page. I'll cut and paste them on my side. The only thing about that is that, it can't be something that's a regulation, like forklift training. You can't be waived from forklift training because that's an OSHA regulation. And then the other thing is that, lost my train of thought. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. There was something about that we can't do with the
if it's
waiver letters.
regulatory, I think if it's regulatory in nature, you would not be able to.
We can't, no.
To waive that as well, right?
Right. No, we absolutely cannot. Nope.
Okay, and just a part two of this, I did see a question come through from HM Clark in the chat. It's really an extension of what we're talking about here, but they asked, I've been told that all has to be in our manual because our technicians could be exposed to those hazards on a job site, i.e. excavation or scaffold. I would also add electrical would be part of that as well. So we review all the potential hazards to be present on a job site. Now you're saying because we have those hazards and processes in our manual, we are deemed incompetent since those are not in our scope. And I can take that, Laurie, but HM Clark, no, we're not deeming you incompetent. But what Laurie is saying is in order to score at 100% on the manual audit when you're being graded, really you should only be submitting material for tasks or hazards that your company is exposed to. So if you are working on equipment that needs to be isolated, for example, under energy isolation, then you would need an energy isolation lockout tagout type program. However, even if you're not the one performing the energy isolation, maybe you're allowing Amazon to perform that isolation, or maybe one of your subcontractors is performing that. You would still need a program in that instance. So hopefully that answered your question on that one. But it's really, you kind of hit it in your first part of the question, but if you are exposed to that hazard, or if you're actually performing that task, you should have a program in place.
Correct. And I remember what I was trying to remember, which I couldn't have, because the audit is good for 3 years and it connects to everybody, every hiring company that you're connected to, the audit pertains to that. So you may not do a task for Amazon, but perhaps you do a task for ABC Plumbing. So any work you do at your site or at others, we have to have a safety program for. If you, and again, auditing is subjective. If you do not actually perform, let's say trenching, you don't perform trenching, but your employees have that risk because of the environment that they're in, you should do some type of awareness level training to make sure that they're aware of the hazards that they're exposed to. They may not need a full-blown training like an electrician or perhaps like a forklift driver. They're not going to drive the forklift, but they could be in a warehouse that has forklifts. So you should have some form of training and program for the awareness level training at a minimum.
Thank you, Laurie, and that will have to conclude the session. Again, you can refer to the links if you want to stay in this session. We will be going on to the next topic within management systems, which will be integrated management systems, or you may join one of the other breakouts, and in the chat we have a link, or you can scroll down on the page and click on either breakout 1, breakout 2, breakout 3, breakout 4, and join those other sessions. So thanks everyone for your time, and we will be back on here at 12:45 Pacific.